L'objet inanimé avez-vous donc une âme qui s'attache à notre âme et à la force d'aimer?
Have you ever wondered if objects feel? If they are more than solid structures and they actually understand us? Or maybe if they actually care about us? Or have you ever wondered if it could be the other way around? We all love certain objects or things that belong to us, but until what point? At least to the point that something can happen to a loved one and we do not get as distressed as if something happened to our computer, our cell phone, or any object that we truly care about. So if it is like this, how strange is it that there are people who fall in love with objects, feeling a deep sexual attraction, affection, and compassion? Yes, this is one of the premises that Zoe Wittock, Belgian director and screenwriter, portrays perfectly in her debut film, Jambo. The following video has the objective of reviewing how the feature film Jambo presents the subject of objectophilia or objectum sexuality as a valid form of love. Also, the importance of being empathetic and to stop judging people because of their choices. And of course, how far can we go because of this inherent need of the human being to love and being loved.
Jambo is a totally different, interesting, and immersive love story, inspired by true events, directed and written by Zoe Wittock. Jambo tells the story of Jean Tantois, a shy and withdrawn young woman who still lives with her mother, and how does she realize that she has a peculiar liking for a member of her work. Jean discovers that she has a fascination that she cannot control with Move It, the new attraction acquired by the amusement park in which she works. Jambo shows both poles of the story, the confusion and rejection of a mother by the sexuality of her daughter, and the discovery and personal acceptance of Jean herself.
Now, before starting this analysis, if you're someone who has not seen this movie, I recommend you to stop, go watch the movie, and come back to this analysis. If you had never heard of this, the film certainly took you by surprise. I must admit, I knew very little about it, and I still didn't know how to react at first. And you may have wondered, are there similar cases to this? Objectophilia is a topic that is still treated as a taboo today. There are writings, documentaries, and other type of information that claim it is a psychological disorder. Also, there are other pieces of information that claim that it is a not so well-known branch of the different paraphilias. And also some say that it is a type of sexuality. What everyone agrees on is that objectophilia is a physical and emotional attraction to objects. Yes, it is an interesting, controversial, and uncomfortable topic for many people. However, making a complete film about it and delicately touching the subject without judging, neutrally and creatively, required a lot of courage. And that brave person was a woman named Zoe Wittock, who not only ventured to talk about a subject that hasn't been explored in cinema, but chose to do so in her first feature film. Wow, respect.
So the idea about this modern fairy tale about a young girl and a machine really came about when I read an article about Erika Eiffel. So Erika is what we call an objectum sexual. She actually fell in love with the Eiffel Tower and decided to marry it. Then I really tried to research it and quickly understood that first it was not a joke, and that Erika's fight was just like anybody else's fight. And being very young at the time, it really questioned the way that I viewed gender and sexual identity at a time where I was questioning my own. I think that I was always very attracted to outcasts as characters, especially being that I was very tall and quirky and not to the boys' liking, so I always felt kind of awkward, and I think it was from that moment that I started questioning what people called different or even sometimes monstrous. Now that doesn't mean that I fell in love with the machine myself, but because so many people were eager, unfortunately, to call it unacceptable, just like Joy's mother in the film, I knew that if I were going to get anyone to understand the humanity behind the story, I really had to arouse as many emotions as I could, both visually and auditory, just as Joy was falling in love with Jumbo and ultimately discovering her sexuality.
The director's attraction to this theme resulted in a film that explored a huge range of emotion. And it is a truly striking proposal. The idea of the script, the direction, the music, the incredible photographic work of Thomas Bullins, and of course the spectacular selection of actors and actresses make Jumbo a film that, instead of provoking this kind of rejection to this peculiar theme, it makes you think, empathize, and understand that the price of intolerance is high.
Jean, played by Noémie Merlan, one of the greatest promises of French cinema, seems interesting to me. She's a lonely young woman, strange in the eyes of others, with features of social anxiety and, above all, with too much insecurity not only towards people, but towards herself. Perhaps it is the absence of her father and the behavior of her mother, much of the reason why Jean has developed a lot of insecurity in her being. A shyness that grabs you since the first minutes of her appearance.
Noémie Merlan once again leaves us speechless with the development of this character. Her performance is so detailed that you could close your eyes and just by listening to her voice, you can actually know that Jean is an introverted woman withdrawn and that she is feeling rejected by people.
From the very beginning, we are captivated by a beautiful and magical introduction. A few intense lights approach towards Jeanne. She slowly opens her arms in a form of release. The music is increasing its intensity. The colors are vivid. Jeanne seems to be experiencing a kind of ecstasy. It is, to my taste, a graphic representation of the intense sensations that flourish during an orgasm. And suddenly, Zoe wakes us up from that trance along with Jean, who is wrapped in a towel, sitting in front of what appears to be scale miniatures of different attractions, an interesting first approach to the pleasure that our main character feels for objects.
In a hurry, we see how Jean gets ready for her work and is exposed when the towel falls down to the floor. We start to get to know her a little bit more, since it seems that she cannot be in solitude, naked, and immediately she grabs the towel from the floor and throws it to one of the miniatures that is in front of her. Perhaps it is herself who does not yet understand why does she feel this sexual attraction and desire for objects. A great and subtle move by Zoe just in the first scene. Little is known about Jean's life, and during a conversation with her mother, Margaret, who's played by Emmanuelle Bercotte, we find some clues from her past and present.
Un pour ma petite, un pour moi, un pour ton père. Maman! Bah quoi, faut bien reconnaître qu'il a participé, non? C'est pas avec mon biberon que je te pète, hein? Malheureusement.
On one hand, we know that the father figure is completely absent, and on the other hand, the presence of her mother is just overwhelming. She's intense, she has a lot of sexual energy. Margaret is just the exact opposite of Jean. Jean's world is very interesting, even with the intensity of her mother. Jean has created this kind of bubble in her house. It is her safe place. It's the only space where she can live her intimacy and discover her sexuality. When Zoe introduces us to Jean's reality, we see how she really interacts with people during her job. She is the janitor of the park during the nighttime shift. We understand that she feels like an entity among people, and
from the moment she arrives at her job and a group of mean boys make fun of her, until she meets with whom we understand is her new boss, Marc, who from the first moment shows interest in Jean, after, by accident, watching how she changed her blouse.
Vous êtes qui?
Je m'appelle Marc.
The main character's anxiety, I consider, is very well portrayed at the beginning. She feels unprotected, fragile, vulnerable, and who likes to feel like this? It is when deeper topics begin to arise within the film. Themes that embrace the whole story and that go beyond objectophilia. And there are empathy and tolerance, both too necessary in this world nowadays. Feeling the distress on Jean's look when having to deal with people is something that Zoe searched a lot during the film. She can hold most people's gazes, her body turns rigid when someone approaches to her, and she clearly does not feel part of this world. And something that I found really incredible is that Zoe never explores the story of Jean as a person with psychological problems or as an abnormal woman. Quite the opposite. The entire approach to the story is based on respect, and Zoe herself explains why. For an interview for Cine Europa, Zoe Wittock explains how she came up with this story and why her approach to the film is like a modern fairy tale instead of a critic.
When I came across with Erika's Eiffel news, it made me smile, but it also fascinated me. I got in touch with the woman in question, Erika Eiffel, and started to talk with her. I felt a bit silly because, with all the cliches I had in my mind, I'd expected to be dealing with someone a bit different on the margins of society. But actually, I found myself with someone very sensible, normal even, insofar as anyone can be described as normal. That fascinated me even more. She was the one who set the tone of the film. She would say to me, "It's just a love story." And that was the basis for the screenplay, which I wrote keeping her example in mind. I found the Eiffel Tower too static for a fiction film, so I chose a fairground ride instead, a machine which naturally gives rise to certain sensations within us, whether we are objectophiles or not.
And if we take Zoe's answer when she refers to normality, I ask, and it will help myself to continue with the review of this film, what is normal? According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, it's according to constituting or not deviating from a norm, rule, or principle, or conforming to a type, standard, or regular pattern. Standard or regular pattern. This is precisely the theme addressed in the film. What is normal? As Zoe says in different interviews, Jumbo presents the subject of objectophilia as a coming out. And it is striking that the rejection the Jean receives, or even the subject matter, is the exact same rejection that those who accept their sexuality and share it with the world continue to suffer today. This film is a mirror of the intolerance that it is experienced when people's choices are out of the ordinary in any type of subject or form. Perhaps the concept of normality is part of the justification of this lack of empathy that we live nowadays.
Jean lives in her world, and in it, she is very happy. While she is alone, we see her smiling, enjoying herself, and even excited to do her job. And it is at this precise moment when the main story begins to unfold. And during her night shift, she finds the new park attraction, Move It. While carefully cleaning the light bulbs of Move It with her saliva, the machine responds to her care with a slight blink. Is Jean imagining it? Is it happening? That depends on us, the viewers. However, real or imagined, we began to see this subtle flirty game.
Possibly we would do it differently. Maybe we would smile at each other at a bar or something, but Jean lives it completely different with Jumbo.
Her affinity for objects begins to appear more constantly as we watch her build a miniature of a Wheel of Fortune in the solitude of her room.
I love how she seems to be confirming her theory. She feels a great attraction for objects. And step by step, she starts to focus more on one. Move it. Jean's world has a small room for people. And one of those who occupy this prestigious spot is her mother, who is a somewhat uncomfortable character.
The mother, interested in her daughter having some kind of romance with a man, makes intimate jokes even in the presence of Mark, her boss, forcing an interaction that Jean does not want to have.
Marc,
Ouais.
t'as déjà ressenti des choses avec un objet, toi?
Comment ça?
Je sais pas. Comme quand tu les touches ou quoi? Tu pouvais ressentir? Comprendre des choses? Des choses qu'on comprend pas sinon? Ou qu'on connaît pas?
Non, pas vraiment. Bah, ça me fait penser à un truc bizarre que me disait ma mère avant de me coucher. Tu te fous pas de ma gueule. Elle disait... Objet inanimé, avez-vous donc une âme qui s'attache à notre âme et la force d'aimer? Un truc comme ça.
Jean finally understands what she is feeling.
Objet inanimé, avez-vous donc une âme qui s'attache à notre âme et à la force d'aimer?
Mark gradually tries to enter into Jean's world, but not in the way he expects. She feels protected in her space, around her miniatures, and while she's showing him some of the things that she has built, Jean says something that I believe is super deep.
De l'extérieur, c'est que des machines, mais si tu regardes bien, elles changent de forme. Et elles t'embarquent. Un peu comme nous, quoi.
And at that moment, Mark makes his flirting attempt and he confesses her that he actually likes her.
Tu me plais.
It is no longer a simple machine. It is no longer called Move It. It is called Jambo for Jean. She thinks about him. She gets aroused about him. She explores herself with Jambo in her mind. It is no longer a simple object.
And here, I'm going to take the opportunity to talk about the person in charge of the cinematography of the film, the genius Thomas Bullins, who, as he explains in an interview for Medium,
The more the story progresses and deeper Jean's character, skillfully portrayed by Noémie Merlon, falls in love with Jambo, the closer I stay on her with the camera. This way, we immerse the viewer into Jean's world and hopefully share her feelings for Jambo.
one of the greatest highlights of this film, which deserves an honorable mention, is the cinematography of the film. The cinematography begins to evolve and becomes much more mature, seeking to produce, along with the plot of the film, a type of magic realism, without falling into a surreal movie nor a documentary. And in my opinion, this goal is incredibly accomplished.
With a beautiful range of colors and a futuristic vibe, Jambo begins to take life. The interaction begins to develop first with this innocent feeling in which she needs to touch the machine. She climbs it barefoot, and when she receives a call from her mother, which we understand is a bartender, her phone falls and she sleeps, being barely supported with her fingers to a part of Jambo. We understand that he protects her and helps her to get down to the floor. It is at that moment when their communication begins and she experiences intense sensations for the first time when she rides the attraction. The photography, the rhythm of this scene, the spectacular performance of Noémie Merlon, and the music brings us closer to the intense feelings that Jean feels. The interesting fact is that the Jambo is no longer anthropomorphized only by Jean. Also, as an audience, we have already begun to try to see this machine as someone within the context of this story and not as something.
In my opinion, the line was very thin. On one hand, there was a risk of using a lot of special effects and turning the Jambo into an animated character. On the other hand, there was the option of giving it human features through a language of lights, sounds, and fluid movements, but limited into a certain extent, such as a park fair attraction does. Zoe surprised everyone. She decided to go for the most complicated part, for the magical realism of the story, where a collaboration between the actress and the machine is needed. During the 2020 Sundance Film Festival edition, Zoe explains,
But then we had to teach him how to act, we had to teach him how to move, how to light up, and most importantly, how to react to Noémie live on set, because we really wanted that raw feeling, that reality of this love story, so we could sell it to the audience.
the most difficult moment for Jean has come. This moment in which she allows us to illustrate the dark part of acceptance and, above all, the maturity that the character has. It is the moment in which Jean decides to introduce to her mother the Jambo.
J'aimerais bien te parler de quelqu'un. Quelqu'un de différent. Pour que tu me dises quoi?
Quoi?
Tension is right there.
C'est Marc, c'est ça?
We're about to witness a crucial moment for Jean and for Margaret, who has no idea how her son-in-law looks like.
Jeanne?
Jean has decided to introduce Jambo to her mother.
Jeanne?
This scene is worth analyzing because it has a lot of characteristics. There is intrigue, there is curiosity, there is disappointment, and there's also comedy. And how important it is that Zoe has used comedy as a catalyst for Jean's conversation. Just as the director explains, laughter helps us control the uncomfortable. And as an audience, it was essential to laugh without making fun of the situation nor the story.
Comme ça. Je t'aime, tu sais.
Oh là 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 là, viens chez maman, toi.
Jean is ready to discuss her sexuality with her mother,
Il s'appelle Jumbo, maman.
and Jean, giving her clues, it occurs to her to invite her mother to ride the attraction.
Tu sais pas comment c'est ça? Non, c'est pas pour du sexe, c'est autre chose. C'est... Je sais pas comment dire.
Il est où ce gars-là? Moi, s'il y a bien un truc que j'aime pas, c'est les lâches.
Viens. Normalement, il n'y a pas le droit, mais bon. Si personne voit, personne sait. Hein?
And it is between Jean's screams of excitement encouraging Jambo to increase its speed when Margaret realizes that it is not a man, it is Move It, the new ride of the fair.
Je crois que c'est pour de vrai. Entre-lui, vas-y, Jumbo, plus vite!
I think something worth mentioning and highlighting is that this communication presented in the film between Jean and the Jambo, with its intense colors and this beautiful and impressive sounds, does not happen when more people are present. And it seems to me that this is a balance between the coldness, rawness, and fantasy that makes us see love through an objectum sexual person's eyes, and how beautiful it actually is for them, you know? Even though others perceive it differently because we see a simple machine. But if we dig a little deeper, love is like that. Only we see and feel those feelings for the person with whom we are in love with. So within the crazy, the strange, the peculiar, the bizarre of the subject, the new question for you is, as long as you don't harm anyone or commit any type of crime, are all forms of love valid? I mean, if it's real love for those who feel it, what is the correct answer? As Noémie explains during an interview for l'Instant Cinéma about her character on the film.
Et non, et c'est une jeune femme en fait qui est très introvertie, mais au fond qui est très forte parce qu'elle assume ses désirs, elle suit ses désirs, elle essaie assez rapidement d'en parler à sa mère, de lui faire comprendre sa bizarrerie, qui c'est pas bizarre pour elle, mais faire comprendre ça, et je trouvais ça fort et moderne.
C'est une blague, non?
I don't even know how to start talking about this part of the movie. How important, creative, respectful, sensual, and beautiful scene this is. Sexuality is not the same as sensuality. Most of the movies use sexual scenes that only portray desire, passion, and to a certain extent, selfishness. But this is very different from sensuality and erotism. Sensuality is consensual, is coordinated, is slow, it's respectful, is subtle, is elegant. And I presume to say that through the eyes of a female director, it is very common to see sensual scenes instead of sexual scenes.
Zoe and Thomas Bullens proved it. This moment was my favorite in the film. The metaphors that Zoe projects in this scene are very subtle. First, we see that Jumbo begins to spill this oily fluid in this idea of collaboration between the two. Jean touches the oil with a different expression than those we have seen throughout the film. We understand what is about to happen between the two. There is no doubt that with such a complete performance, hypnotic cinematography, and hyper-creative direction, any element can be erotic and beautiful. I never thought I would see so much sensuality in the oil. That is why the metaphorical representation of this scene is a true masterpiece. I consider that each person will interpret different things in this sequence. For me, it is a game of mutual exploration, of courtship, of conquest. Jean feels Jambo, and Jambo feels her. The oil gradually covers her body until Jean lets out a sigh and her pupils dilate, reaching an orgasm. No, strangely, I never doubted, says Zoe Wittock. I was convinced that this scene was essential, that this completely dematerialized side of the scene was important in giving sensuality and erotism a place of honor rather than sexuality. I wanted to give way to romanticism instead of what some people might call sexual deviation. I don't call it deviation, it's a matter of choice. On the other hand, I was aware of the ridiculous potential of such a situation, and it is with this awareness that we work the scene. Sometimes, I also play with this ridiculous side because there is a lot of humor in this movie. We are aware of the strangeness of the subject, and what I like to say to the spectators is that it is good to laugh. It is good to feel uncomfortable, because it is the unknown, because it is different. That does not mean that, despite this concern, we cannot understand and empathize with Jean. Certainly, we ask ourselves questions as the movie progresses, but we had to make the viewers say to themselves, or not, I empathize with this character, and after the movie, ask, but how did I do to be empathetic with her?
Brave. This is the cinema made by women. New proposals, looks, styles. That is why this scene is so important. She had two options. Having an uncomfortable sexual sequence between Jean and Jambo, a scene that could provoke a collective thought of strangeness and madness, or do what the director did. Explore the poetic and the metaphorical side of making love, even with the rare spectrum of the story.
Intolerance has knocked on the door of house number 2. During a heated, heartbreaking discussion with her mother, we truly empathize with Jean. We may not agree or completely understand what the character feels. However, thanks to the sweetness and sensitivity with which Noémie interpreted Jean, we end up questioning our empathy towards people. Do we respect others' decisions? After Jean tells Margaret she had an orgasm with Jambo, she immediately gets rejected by her. Sadly, a commonly lived situation nowadays.
C'est pas de ma faute. D'accord. C'est juste qu'il me rend heureuse. C'est tout. J'ai pas choisi. C'est comme ça. Je veux juste que tu comprennes, que tu m'écoutes.
Ouais, ok, je vais essayer. Vas-y, je t'écoute, c'est quoi? Vas-y, explique. C'est les vibrations qui t'excitent, c'est quoi? Tu lui graisses les rouages et c'est parti. Yeah! Ça glisse mieux, c'est ça, c'est quoi?
Pourquoi t'es méchante?
Tu me dirais, il y a peut-être des risques de court-circuit, non? Parce que si tu mouilles vraiment, il peut rouiller, tu sais ça? Tu sais ça?
T'es comme papa, en fait.
Sors de chez moi. Sors de chez moi. Jeanne, tu sors, je veux plus te voir. Tu sors! Je veux plus te voir. Je veux plus te voir! Et t'en fous pas la pied ici tant que t'as pas sorti cette ferraille de ta tête, t'as compris?
Jean feels sick and observed. Rejected by everyone except Mark, who kisses her in a forced attempt when he sees her all troubled after her fight with her mother. She does not feel for people what she feels for objects. For Jean, objects are subjects. Interesting fact, during this era, she sees objects as subjects, while those who look at her, instead of seeing a subject, they see and treat her as an object.
I think that the crude, real, and uncomfortable way in which we see how Jean decides to prove if she actually feels something during intimacy with a person is one of the most significant moments of the film.
The lack of sensuality, the fact that she does not feel anything while she is with Mark, the sadness in her face, and how raw sex can become if there is no collaboration, is what Jean needed to experiment to accept herself.
As Noémie says it really well, Jean is a very brave woman. As an audience, how is it possible to feel worried about her infidelity to Jambo? It is only possible when you have an acting range as impressive as Noémie Merlan has. A woman that does not cease to amaze us in every film in which she participates and or directs. As Noémie says, for synergy.
J'aime bien sortir de ma zone de confort. J'aime bien aller vers des personnages qui peuvent déranger sur le papier et qui amènent ailleurs, qui ouvrent à un dialogue aussi.
And that's what Jean Tantois does. She opens a really interesting dialogue. This film teaches us empathy in a practical way, just as the director explains.
Maintaining this ambiguity offered the viewers an opportunity to ask themselves several questions. It allowed them to keep their imagination and allow me to give emotion a privileged place. I think it's good to let the viewers be rational or not. And I think all that matters ultimately is, does our character believe it or not? From the moment Jean believes in it, the only thing that matters to me is asking myself, do I believe in her or not?
And it is precisely when deciding to believe in Jean, the plot of the film changes radically. The rawness becomes softness, the cold tones of the film become warm, and this makes me think of two important things. First, how expensive is the price of intolerance? And what great rewards acceptance and respect are. Honestly, I did not expect the ending that the film had. At first, I didn't know if I was completely satisfied or I would have liked a more raw ending until I saw the movie again and I understood Zoe's goal: to stop labeling people as bizarre or abnormal and to eliminate this idea that because of being an objectum sexual, you cannot be happy. So quoting Zoe herself.
One thing that you said was, that the movie was about letting go, and I think that's a really good way of actually talking about the film more generally as well, is that this is really about letting go of your fear. This is a movie about accepting who you are and accepting other people's differences. So yeah, it is about letting go. It's about letting go of our prejudices. It's about letting go of our fears, and it's about accepting each other. So.
Yes, a film becomes excellent when, besides the technical elements, it leaves you with a much deeper message from the script itself. And that happens with this spectacular film. I take from Jambo a message that will resonate with me all the time, and is that as human beings, we have objectified everything that comes from nature. And we do not criticize that. We do not judge treating nature as an object and using it, hurting it. Worse still, we do not judge treating people as objects, criticizing them, hurting them, rejecting them, abusing them, and even depriving them of their freedom. For me, Zoe has put a magnifying glass on a subject that exhibits much more than a type of sexuality or a branch of paraphilia. She has brought to light our thoughts, our judgments, and she has invited us to ask ourselves really important questions. How empathetic are we? How distant are we from the character? How close are we to objects? And what are the limits of love? Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked it, please leave your comments below and subscribe to the channel. And if you answer the questions that I asked you at the end of the film, please just tell me your answer and what do you think and what are your own conclusions. Thank you, Zoe, for this beautiful film. I truly believe this movie needs to be seen in every part of the world because it has a super powerful and brave message. Thank you very much, and till next time.